My name is Bobby Doolittle. I'm a physician in town that practices mainly adolescent medicine, something I trained in the early 70s. And I'd like to set the stage for our mostly questions and answers about issues you may be confronted with by talking for just a minute. You know, children become adolescents as the sex hormones begin increasing in their body, creating a growth spurt and secondary sexual characteristics and their different ideas about activity, but most importantly, kicking off the brain maturation that lets them go from thinking concretely, like children think, to thinking abstractly. For the first time in their life, they can develop an opinion about themselves. For the first time in life, they can project their actions into the future, and they can begin to understand future consequences of their behavior. But being able to look at yourself critically enables you to become depressed or anxious or obsessive about things you can't quite do in the same way as a child. And with that comes the problems that we see in adolescence. In childhood, you might see the mental health issues of ADD and ODD and spectrum disorders, learning disabilities, problems with parental neglect and abuse. But as you get the abstract thinking capacity with brain maturation, that turns into poor self-esteem, self-deprecation, self-loathing, self-injury, depression, anxiety, drug abuse, sexual acting out, pregnancy. The whole notion of parental abuse and neglect takes on a different spectrum as kids can run away or want to run away. Divorce has a whole new meaning to an adolescent that it didn't to a child. Early adolescents, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, are asking the question, am I normal? That's the time of the growth spurt. They're looking at themselves every minute of every day. They're on a stage. Everything that happens to them to the exclusion of the rest of the world. This is a person that's great in the family. They like to be in the family. They look to the family for the answers to their questions. As they become 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, they're moving from am I normal to who am I? They look to their peer group. They try out different roles and guises, and they do what their peer group tells them is okay to do. If it's okay to do drugs, it's okay to have sex, those are the kind of things that they'll begin to draw as they look to see who they are in this adult world. They distance from the family feels rejected. It's a time of turmoil. Hopefully they graduate from that into late adolescence where they're asking, who might I become? If they get a good answer to am I normal? Yeah, which you don't get if you've got a chronic disease or you've got parental divorce or one of your parents is in jail. If they get a good answer to am I normal, they'll have a heads up on who am I? And they'll be ready to go to work or go to the military or go to college and say, who might I become? If they don't have good answers in those first two layers, you're going to see somebody who goes to college, drinks all the time, flunks, somebody who goes into the workforce, can't hold a job, somebody who ends up after college back in the parents' basement playing video games without any purpose in life. That's it in a nutshell. So we now have the opportunity for you guys to take part here, and we're at the end where most of the time we're seeing kids that are already in trouble. And we're hoping to be able to build a bridge so that we can have you in your everyday work life or home life spot trouble as it's just getting started in a way that you'll be able to intervene and direct or assist. And maybe in this dialogue we can find out some ways to build better programs, to build better connections within the community. As we talk about it, let's preface it with the comment that self-esteem comes from one's ability to be able to have a responsible role, first in the family and then in their community. So I'd open the floor to questions. Yes?
Good question, and I guess this is for the panel. What kind of impact do you think that charter schools and magnet schools taking kids out of their neighborhoods, that sort of thing, have caused lack of support? And I'm going by based on like when I was a child and had, we had 3 churches in the neighborhood, the teachers lived in the neighborhood, we walked to school, our parents weren't driving us everywhere to go to a church or go to this or go to that, everything was right there. And the school was a big support because the teachers lived in the same place the kids lived in and that sort of thing. And I know we can't go backwards to 50 years ago, but it seems like go to one school over here, they go to one school over there. I'm just wondering.
Did everyone hear the question? It's about whether the movement for charter schools and homeschools has created an isolation for kids in the same neighborhood, basically. I assume that's directed at you, Alex.
Sure. That's a good question, and I'm not really sure how the impact is on individual students, because I really think it depends on what their support system already in place is. I know sometimes it's frustrating in my own neighborhood. I feel like we're one of the only people that send our kids to public school. And I think it's a disadvantage for my kids, because they don't get to go to school with people who they would see and interact with, or they won't interact with those other kids because of that. I think it really just depends on the services and supports that the school has, the services and supports around the family. Again, it's also different when we're in a big county. I'm from New Jersey, and I went to school in Pennsylvania for 8 years for college and graduate school. So those are small. That's a different situation, because they're smaller counties. I felt like it was not smaller counties, individual school districts. So you knew everybody that was in. You lived in the same place. There were less options to go other places. I did feel a little more tight knit when that community setting than here, or in the a lot of the southern states where they have larger county-based school districts. So, but I think that's something that we're trying to actually look at, is building more cohesive, more community feeling within our district. And even if they do decide to go to a different school within our system, you're still going to the same system. You're still within that system. We're still going to kind of hopefully wrap our arms around that kid and that family and get them engaged in things not only that would be at that school, but hopefully tie them into things that are in their own community around where they would live.
It just seems like now we have to find support as opposed to just
being already there.
Just a natural, natural support that
Yeah.
would have been a natural support, like for someone like my age, growing up in a community that you just walk out your door and there's all your natural support.
And hopefully, charter schools is the big burst of charter schools is relatively new here in this county. And I think as they kind of get established, hopefully there'll be, better systems of support kind of in place or around that community.
Yes.
Okay, my question is going to be as far as religion in school. I know that I used to work for Guilford County School. I was an ACES site coordinator. And so I got a lot of the children in the afternoon, the behavior children, the ones you call that nobody really want to have anything to do with. I did learn how to build relationships with them. And in fact, I was the one they would come to when they had an issue. Now, as far as spirituality, a lot of the kids would ask me things, and I would tell them, I'm not supposed to, not really talk about, my beliefs, but I did. I mean, if they were questioning it, I did. So my question is, I know that the churches are learning how to deal with mental illnesses and behavior issues, not just in the aspect of praying and scripture, but knowing other outlets. How does that work, like within the school system? I mean, because you can't really bring up the issue of religion as far as the social workers and the counselors, which the counselors probably don't do a whole lot more so. So, I mean, would they be able to recommend, a possible religious outlet for this child to go to get therapy or whatever they need?
So the question here is about the separation of church and state, and that age-old thing about what can you do with your own faith in terms of being a person that you get to interact with youth in a setting like a school or like a church, I assume, as I'm hearing that, okay?
Well, I know that, a lot of those conversations can be individual with the parent and making sure that you understand where the parent's coming from, and then, having those conversations. I know that, there are policies and procedures in place of things that you can say and can't say, or things, especially when it comes to referrals. That's something we deal with all the time is, we always get questions on where can I refer this child for, services, or, what kind of agencies can I refer for the parent? And a lot of times, we provide lists so that we don't get into channeling people into one different area. So a lot of times we will provide kind of just a sheet of 5 to 10 or 15 different things that the parent could get involved in. Having individual conversations with the parent and seeing where they're coming from, and then maybe giving suggestions that way. But yeah, I know there are certain things we can and can't really get into. You kind of toeing that line, especially when you're in the schools. But I know that our school system has a lot of communication with faith-based community and just outreach, and so there's a lot of that interaction going on and working collaboratively, because we're all there for the same purpose, and that's to build good citizens through our schools and teach kids. It's all about teaching and learning. So however we can get to that, without kind of crossing boundaries, I think we're going to try and work on that. But directly, your question, I know there's certain things that obviously we have to try to avoid when it comes to, I need you to go to this place because we feel like that's the best place for you, because maybe you personally know that that's a good site, versus kind of giving a list of opportunity, a list of places.
Now, a corollary to that question might be, what does Michael have to deal with when he has a bunch of different kids in all different schools that then come to him for whatever services he's offering? Would you comment about that? How do you build community there?
Sure. Yeah, we deal with that because we're right in the middle of Greensboro. We have students from lots of private schools, lots of public schools, different. We have students that come. I have some that come all the way from Winston-Salem to be involved in our ministry. One of the biggest things I think that we try to be involved in that not necessarily supersedes the school system, but I very strongly encourage all of our volunteers to be heavily involved in the families. So they're connecting with the parents. It's not just some random adult that your kid's hanging out with, because that doesn't sound great. So we actually have a process for all of our volunteers to interact with the parents at the beginning of the creation of a small group, so that there is a foundation of relationship between the parents and the small group leader. And that kind of, what I've seen actually, that kind of gives a pathway for other kids that may go to school with the kids who are involved in our ministry, if they're dealing with something. So it doesn't even necessarily need to go through the social worker or the guidance counselor or whatever. It's a peer-to-peer connection where they say, I'm dealing with this, and then that student may be able to say, well, I've got some community that you could be a part of. I see that happen constantly, that on a peer-to-peer level as opposed to a structured process.
One of the most important things I mentioned for a middle adolescent is to be able to see themselves outside the family unit and find some other direction. And so schools and churches both provide a platform for a different view of the world than the view that you're getting at home, and that's very important. Mickey and I both have had experience through our own kids with something that I've asked her to mention that is a way kids get a new look at life here.
For high schoolers, there is an experience that a kid can choose to participate in called Anytown. And they endeavor to bring together many kids in the community of different races, faiths, I believe sexual orientations, a wide variety of kids. And in that week, they communicate about what it is they are dealing with, both from prejudices or negative experiences, or what type of acceptance that they feel that they need. And it's run by, they've changed the name of it, the North Carolina Communities and Justice. Is that it?
NCCJ.
Yeah. I knew it was NCCJ, I just couldn't remember the exact thing, but I think it's North Carolina Communities and Justice, is it not? And it is a very powerful experience. Both of my kids went through it. They still talk about it. Ironically, just the other day I was talking to a student who has been through it and is going to be volunteering in that experience, that just found it very empowering and enlightening in terms of coming to understand other points of view. He can still say, in his case, I'm a white guy Christian, but I at least now understand where other people are coming from and what they go through, and try to be more open in accepting, in the sense of being kind and making sure other people are kind to others. But that was a very powerful experience in helping them to look at the world in a broader view that I think increased their understanding of the world and how they can interact with it in a positive way.